Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
Faster Mai, good evening, it's 5:30. This is Update for Thursday, 2nd of November 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes and we'll look at the latest news on the island. Background to that news, we've got sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates and the newsmakers in person. This evening the Chief Minister hits back at trade union claims. NHS dental waiting list up 21% in 6 months. The pension triple lock stays for next year. Bus timetables will get public consultation. And the Manx badminton team's off to the Malta Championships.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, these are the update news headlines. Faster Mai, Lewis Foster.
Faster Mai. People don't have to wait until a formal public consultation to submit their views on the island's bus timetable. That's from the Infrastructure Minister, who says his department is always open to feedback on the topic. Tim Crookall has been responding to criticism after he promised a full consultation into the service in December 2021. Manx Care and the Department of Infrastructure are looking for a new COVID-19 vaccination hub after the healthcare provider raised concerns over the suitability of the Chester Street facility. The board says there's been significant water ingress at the site, there are difficulties heating the building and a lack of staff facilities. And a Ramsey MHK who's trying to remove the next bishop's vote says he doesn't want to debate the issue again because everything that needed to be said has already been aired. Next week, Laurie Hooper will ask the House of Keys for permission to introduce a motion which would stop the head of the Manx Church having a say in Tynwald or the Legislative Council. In the international news, Rishi Sunak says tech companies have agreed to work with governments to test artificial intelligence models before they are released. The UK Prime Minister was speaking at his AI summit at Bletchley Park. He says firms can't be allowed to mark their own homework. The UK Foreign Office says more British nationals have been able to leave Gaza today. They've passed through the Rafah crossing into Egypt. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims Israeli troops have pushed through the outskirts of Gaza City. And the Bank of England is predicting hardly any economic growth until early 2025. It's also kept interest rates on hold at 5.25%. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with the news at 6 o'clock.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Goromaya, thank you. Lewis from the Ronaldsway Met Office. There is a strong wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea is slight or moderate. This evening, dry and cloudy and a fresh to strong wind coming in from the northwest. We're down to 10 through the night. For Friday, Jehenya, mostly dry with sunny intervals tomorrow. Risk of showers coming in and a fresh to strong northwest wind up to 12 Celsius. Overnight minimum is 11. For Jasan, Saturday, dry with much lighter winds and sunny intervals. Nice day. Top temperature 11 Celsius. Sunset was at 17 minutes to 5. Low water 27 minutes to 9 tonight. The overnight high water 22 minutes after 2. Sunrise 22 minutes past 7. Low water is at 24 minutes to 9 tomorrow morning. No problems on the Mountain Road and there is a delay on the Gatwick flight tonight.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
The Chief Minister says he rejects comments made in a letter from the British Medical Association trade union in the strongest possible terms. The organisation's Chair of Council, Professor Philip Banfield, wrote to Alfred Cannon MHK to express concern over the effectiveness of 2 ongoing reviews. With the latest, Tessa Hawley.
Mr Cannon says he was surprised to receive the correspondence as the Isle of Man government is fully committed to identifying lessons from the handling of COVID-19. The BMA BMA's letter described how former medical director Dr. Rosalind Ranson considers the COVID review to be a sham, but Mr. Cannon insists it has no obligation to government and the ability to call a formal public inquiry. He goes on to say government is cooperating fully with the review into its handling of Dr. Ranson's tribunal, which the BMA and Dr. Ranson also expressed concern over. Mr. Cannon concludes his response to Professor Banfield by stating that the chairs of these reviews act free from political or official interference, writing, "I reject the content of your letter in the strongest possible terms." Mr. Cannon adds, "I cannot see how your intervention has any beneficial effect in terms of supporting the interests of healthcare professionals." Now, Kate Brunner QC, the chair of the COVID inquiry, has also responded to the letter from the BMA. She says her work is robust and independent. She adds that she invites analysis of her report when it's published in 2 months' time, rather than conjecture about the review's processes and findings at this stage. And you can find more on this story at manxradio.com.
Dental waiting lists have increased by more than 21% since April of this year, but there's little Manx Care can do to tackle the backlog without extra money, resources, according to Healthcare Providers Operations Director. With more than 4,200 people now on an NHS dentist waiting list, Oliver Radford provided an update at Manx Care's board meeting.
We had a workshop between ourselves, the primary care team within Manx Care, colleagues from the AGs and the DHSC, to see whether there is anything that we can do to kind of maximise our contractual levers to drive performance. Unfortunately, there's very little that we can do, as advised by the AGs, around our ability to amend or do anything to the contract, which is unfortunate. Unfortunately, there isn't anything that we can do, significantly at the moment to reduce the number of people waiting, to reduce that waiting list. Either we need a significant injection of cash to increase the number of units of dental activity that we have available to contract out, or introduce some kind of limitations or eligibility criteria, which I know I mentioned last time. But if we don't either increase the capacity or reduce the demand, I think our ability to maximise efficiency is, whilst there is some opportunity there, it is limited, and it's not going to solve the increase. And we are continuing to see increasing additions onto the waiting list. It's interesting to note that the number of patients who have been allocated to a dentist really hasn't changed for the last 10 or 15 years. It's just the waiting list has increased, particularly over the last 12 months.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates.
There's good news for pensioners after the Manx government confirmed it would mirror the UK's commitment to the triple lock in next year's budget. Treasury Minister Dr. Allinson, MHK, unveiled a series of targeted support measures to help the most vulnerable with the cost of living this winter. They also include a winter bonus for people in receipt of low-income benefits and a Christmas bonus for pensioners. That story from Simon Richardson.
The triple lock pledge is subject to the UK committing to the arrangement, which has been in place since 2010. Under the triple lock system, the state pension increases each April in line with whichever of three key measures is highest: inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index for September of the previous year, the average increase in wages across the UK, or 2.5%. It means pensioners are likely to get a boost of around 8.5% based on the inflation figure. Meanwhile, they and a broad range of benefit recipients can also look forward to a £40 Christmas bonus, payable in December. The winter bonus is reintroduced after being suspended for a year, while energy support payments were instead provided to help those on low incomes with domestic fuel costs. The winter bonus is worth up to £350 and will be paid automatically to those who qualify. Finally, free TV licences for all residents over 75 are to continue until the end of 2024. Minister Allinson says his measures to support the most vulnerable members of society will put around £1.8 million into people's pockets.
The Isle of Man set to compete in the inaugural Small States of Europe Badminton Team Championships in Malta this weekend. Starts tomorrow, runs until Sunday. So what challenges might they be expecting? Here's one of the members of the Manx squad, Matt Nicholson.
This time we've got a little bit of an idea because 4 out of the 8 teams played in the Island Games. So the gold and silver medalists in Faroe Islands and Greenland are both playing, along along with us and Gibraltar, whereas the other countries we're not too sure about. But it's a fair idea that we're quite strong, probably a bit stronger than the island. It'll be really valuable to play, say, different people, probably at a higher level, which we're used to on the island and even county. So it should be quite a good experience and hopefully improve everyone and sort of get everyone wanting to get better more, so more opportunities for the island people for playing. Ben, who's unfortunately not eligible for the Island Games, can play in this one, but he was still involved in the team at the Island Games, so we've all been together in July, so I think it does help the spirit of having everyone together multiple times like this. So I think it should be competitive. It said it's going to be hard to tell the unknowns we've got, but it's a strong squad we feel like we've got here, so adding Ben back in sort of helps, but hopefully got a good chance in most of the games. It's not as bad as the Island Games in the sense of we've got 2 team matches each day, the first 2 days, and then depending on if you're in the medal playoffs, you play on the Sunday morning as well. So whereas the Island Games have had 4 back-to-back team matches on the first day, so it's a bit less intense as such. We shouldn't be finishing at a normal time rather than 11 o'clock at night. I think it's very important to have because, say, the one up from this is the European Team Championship where you're playing the likes of Germany and Netherlands, who've got England even, who've got people in the top 10 in the world in different pairings. So it makes it more competitive for, say, us and other islands to get experience on international tournaments. I think, firstly, so we'll play Greenland in the group, so hopefully overturn the 3-2 loss in the semi-final at the Island Games with the main aim for the first bit. So hopefully it's just gain experience and hopefully it'll be competitive and you can take, it's the first one, so it's hard to know what to expect. And then after this one, so I think the plan's to have it every 2 years, so you should have more of an idea for the next one.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Motor vessel Manxman left Heysham at 14 minutes past 3. She'll be into Douglas around 6:30 this evening onto the link span shortly afterwards. Tonight's departures at 8:15. Manxman heads to Heysham, getting there. That's going to be gone midnight probably. The overnight departure's 2:15 from Heysham back to Douglas at 6 tomorrow morning, and Friday morning's departure, Manxman heads to Heysham at 8:45.
Like the Steam Packet on Facebook for the latest sailing information.
The Infrastructure Minister says the Isle of Man's bus timetables will be put out to public consultation after the issue was put on the back burner by his predecessor. Tim Crookall, MHK, says people don't have to wait until that point to get their word in.
The reason it didn't go anywhere was basically because I moved out of there fairly quickly after moving in. Mr. Ashford was quite right, and then I did say that there would be a full review, and I'll come around to that again in a minute. But obviously, when I moved on, that was never taken up by the next minister. So, but there were plans afoot to have that full review, and it never happened. My commitment is now that we absolutely need to do that, and that will now happen. Can I just say at this point, though, you don't have to wait for a review. People can always email in at publictransport@gov.im. You know, we're always willing to take people's comments. And I've got one lady who, God love her, she messages me regularly, and we've had a good conversation about it. But, you know, you can email me or you can email publictransport@gov.im and we'll take your views on board. Obviously, we have to wait like once a year to go through the RTLC and the licensing every year, but we'll do that. And, you know, we're working up now for next year. So that's where we are at the moment. I was disappointed in the comments this morning, and the comment from Mr. Collister also about this government and how bad it was, and you could expect, you know, that's what you could come to expect from this government. He needs to remember he was part of this government as well.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 16 minutes before 6, Starbucks Corporation reported a jump in fourth quarter sales boosted by strong demand in North America. The coffee chain, which has more than 38,000 stores worldwide, said consolidated net revenues rose 11% in the 11 weeks to the 1st of October to $9.4 billion. The chief exec, Laxman Narasimhan, said that they finished the fourth quarter and full fiscal year strong, delivering on the higher end of their full year guidance. For a full daily market report, remember, go to ramseycrookall.com. It was expected, and the Bank of England's decided to hold its base interest rate at 5.25% for the second time in a row. The bank's policymakers said the decision's due to expectations that inflation for consumer goods such as energy and food will fall sharply in the coming months. While there was good news in that inflation's predicted to fall sharply, the bank warned that UK economic growth will flatline with zero growth in 2024. And Moody's credit rating reports upgraded the outlook for the Isle of Man. The government's credit strength, diverse economy and ability to comply with global tax standards are all noted in the credit opinion update, reporting on its financial standing from the international international rating agencies. Moody's, the report provides updated analysis of the Isle of Man's economic and fiscal position and sees the island's credit rating reaffirmed as AA3 while changing the outlook from negative to stable.
The Stock Market Report. Brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European markets closed higher as investors reacted positively to the Bank of England's decision to hold interest rates steady. The dollar fell broadly, oil gained, and gold firmed as the US dollar and Treasury yields retreated on raised bets that the Fed may be done raising interest rates. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall, the close in London, up 1 4/10% at 7,446. The DAX in Frankfurt up almost 1.5% at the close at 15,141 a short time ago in New York City. The Dow Jones Industrial up 1 1/10%, 33,658. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index up at the moment 1 1/3% at 13,236, and the S&P 500 in the Midwest up 1.5% at 4,299. But of course, the trading day continues. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling trading at $1 21.8 cents, €1 14.7 cents, and 22 South African rand 46.7 cents. In commodities, gold flat really, $1,981 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude up 1 2/3%, $86.22.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
A Tynwald petition that will be presented by Paul Crane MLC this month will call on the Council of Ministers to press the UK for an extension of the Isle of Man's territorial waters to the median line between the two countries. It's in the names of Keith Carouche of Ramsey and Philip Crane of Douglas, who've arranged for a pamphlet outlining details of the petition to be delivered to homes around the Isle of Man. With more details, Beth Espy.
The petition draws on the work of the late Nigel Crowe, who believed the Ministry of Justice and Crown Estate Commissioners in the UK should grant the Isle of Man fair, just and equitable maritime benefits to the median line. The Tynwald petition calls upon members of the court to ask the Council of Ministers to enter discussions with the relevant UK bodies with the aim of realising that policy. The petition states that the island and the UK agreed to an extension of Manx territorial sea to 12 miles in 1991 in exchange for £800,000 and the cessation of the Continental Shelf Agreement, under which the island received a share of petroleum licence fees and royalties in respect of the entire UK continental shelf. The petitioners believe that just as the 1991 agreement replaced the one signed off in 1966, there's no reason why a renegotiation can't take place without further financial consideration. They suggest the arrangement established by the UK with Scotland, whereby Crown Estate Scotland manages the exclusive economic zone around that country, with all revenues allocated by the Scottish Government, provides a model for the Isle of Man.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio Sport.
Fast am I, sports editor Rob Pritchard.
Fast am I. Good evening. Starting with hockey, and Bacchus kept their mixed Premier League title defence alive last night with a clinical 7-1 victory over Castletown Celts at the NSC in Douglas. A hat-trick for Andy Whiting, 2 strikes from Luca Parlato and goals from Jamie Brown and Tom Lothian saw Bacchus take maximum points against the southern side. Hannah Lees was on hand to provide the only goal and consolation for Castletown Celts, who, until Wednesday evening, had not lost since the opening day of the season on the 9th of September. Victory means Bacchus moved to within 1 point of both Vikings A and Valkyries A at the top of the Premier League standings, after Vikings secured victory over Valkyries on Tuesday. Castletown Celts, meanwhile, remain 4th in the table on 9 points, 4 points clear of Bacchus B in 5th. Netball now, and the Isle of Man has named its squad to take on fellow island nations in the inaugural Netball Invitational Island Games being held on Manx shores next week. 12 players have been named for the Isle of Man, with a mix of experienced and breakthrough players to contest next week's 5-day event, alongside established members of the side side. Among those selected are Cassie Pizzey, Kenzie Pizzey and Becca Cook, who were part of the Manx Rams under-21 side, which took bronze at the Europe Netball Championship and Challenge in Sheffield last month. The Invitational Games will see the Isle of Man welcome Guernsey, Jersey, Inismon, Shetland and Orkney for 5 days of matches from the 7th to the 11th of November at the NSC. You can see the Isle of Man squad at manxradio.com. And in football, Braddon have moved to the top of the Isle of Man Under-18s League following a convincing win at the Bowl last night. They overcame Rushen United by 8-1, leaving the southern side with just one win from their opening 3 fixtures. Elsewhere, Jims took their first points of this campaign with a 6-2 win in the earlier match on Wednesday evening over Colby.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Good news from Ronaldsway. The London inbound Gatwick 7:30 is now back on time. The 10 to 8 Loganair from London City is on time, and the 5 to 8 returning patient transfer Loganair from Liverpool is on time. Departing tonight 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool on time, and the 8 o'clock return EasyJet to London Gatwick's on time. The Newcastle Town Road still closed between Spring Valley roundabout the bottom of Richmond Hill. That of course was due to finish last Friday. Hasn't yet. Closure of a section of Bretney Close for construction work continues in Jerby. We got temporary lights at the junction of Queen's Road and Park Road in Port St Mary for gas main work. In Laxey, Old Laxey Hills closed for excavation work. Temporary lights on Glencrutchery Road in Douglas at the roundabout with Victoria Road. They're doing resurfacing. Hillside Avenue, Douglas closed through to Circular Road for adjacent office replacement. In Peel, temporary lights on Peveril Road for resurfacing. Castletown has got Queen Street closed for resurfacing too.
H&HMotorcycles.im for all your motorcycle requirements. Southgate Industrial Estate, opposite Quayside Tyres. Call 665646.
The Isle of Man needs to ensure that its employment laws are up to date, according to the Enterprise Minister, Tim Johnston, MHK. A bill which addresses a range of issues, including shared parental leaves, currently progressing through the House of Keys, as Minister Johnson explains.
From the public consultation we had last year on this, well over 500 people put into that, and these were some of the clear issues that were coming out, and recognising that balance and that ability for families to share responsibility and have that flexibility is really important. This is recognising that fundamental point of bringing our legislation up to speed, up to date, that's relevant for modern society, for the way people live now, the way people work, and the flexibility that there is in that sense now. You know, we've got to make sure the legislation around that reflects that.
The parish of Rushen has a new captain, the honour which has been bestowed on Paul Castaigne, a well-known and popular figure in the farming community. Here's Simon Richardson.
Paul, who's known to many people island-wide as a triple winner of the prestigious Cleveland Medal at the Manx Music Festival, will be sworn in at a ceremony at Government House later this year and takes over the role following the retirement of Stan Clucas after 25 years dedicated service to the parish.
I pay tribute to our retiring captain, Mr. Stan Clucas. He's been there and he's guided the parish in the right direction, and hopefully with his guidance he's going to help me mentor the role with me, so I won't be let loose solely on my own. But I've had lots of messages and phone calls from other captains, delighted, and the older you become, the more people you know, and I love the Isle of Man, and I love the people of it, and the way of life that we have that I hold dearly.
Paul, who farms Morehouse Farm in Colby with his partner Sally Ann Maiden, has been extremely active in supporting his local community and regularly sings at events around the island.
The Isle of Man in 30 minutes. Update on Manx Radio with Andy Wint.
Fast am I. Thanks for dropping by. Remember, after 6 o'clock tonight, Howie Kane's here, rekindling old flames. Not what you think, it's all about bonfire night. That's tonight after 6 o'clock. Next week, Laurie Hooper, MHK, will ask the House of Keys for permission to introduce a motion which would stop the head of the Manx Church having a say in Tynwald or Ledgeco. Ramsey, MHK, says he doesn't want to debate the issue again because everything that needs to be said has already been said.
In June, Ms Farragher brought a motion to Tynwald saying that we should remove the bishop. There was a number of amendments tabled to that by Mrs Maltby, by the Speaker, which basically said, no, we should keep the bishop, but we should remove his vote. The House of Keys voted twice on that, so there were two different amendments, and both of them were passed by a majority. 14 members of the House of Keys voted yes to that motion. The wording was very specific, that we should introduce legislation to remove the bishop's vote. That's what it said. So I thought, well, if the House of Keys wants it, let's see if they really do want it. And that's where this came from, really. I don't intend to run the debate again. We said everything that needed to be said in June, so I'd like to think members would acknowledge the fact we've had the debate already and simply decide to vote. I would like to think members would vote the same way they voted in June, unless their opinions have drastically altered in the last few weeks. But ultimately, it was a legislative council decision to not support that vote in Tynwald. I think and I believe that if the House of Keys does this time vote to say yes, we should progress this, then I think what would happen is Legislative Council would respect that decision, would then have their own conversations and debates, hopefully independently of us, and would then also support it.
That's your update tonight, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Lewis Foster, producer Beth Espy. Howie came with a bonfire story after 6. Greatest Hits with Chris Kinley at 6:30. A little live music with Morris Powell at 9. And I'm back tomorrow at 5:30.
WINT